How do you find time to keep the house clean while you homeschool? Today's podcast, we're going to be talking about routines and systems that can keep you on track with your home as you homeschool. Hello, friends. This is the Raising Arrows podcast where we discuss all things large family home and homeschool. I'm Amy Roberts from raisingarrows.net, and this is episode number 157, How to Balance Homeschooling and Homemaking. A little bit about me so that you know where I'm coming from when it comes to homemaking and homeschooling at the same time. I have been homeschooling since my oldest was 4. He's now almost 26. So I have been at this for quite a number of years, and I will be completely honest with you. There were quite a few years in there, especially when I had only little ones, that I was not really doing a great job of keeping the house clean while I homeschooled. And I really kind of thought perhaps it wasn't even a thing that could happen. Maybe you could only homeschool or you could only keep a house. You couldn't do both. But I did find over the years rhythms and systems and routines that I was able to stack on top of each other to make a schedule for my day that worked really well for our family. Now, I'm going to be honest with you here at the top of this. You've got to let go of some expectations. We'll talk about that more as we go. You are not going to have some perfectly kept house because you do homeschool, and that comes with it all kinds of messes that you aren't going to be able to always control. But that's okay. And if you let go of some of those expectations, you will find that you are much healthier, much happier, and much saner. The first thing you need to think about when it comes to keeping a house while you homeschool is what time of day can you homeschool? Now that may seem a bit counterintuitive. You may think, well, I need to think about cleaning the house, not homeschooling. But if you have been called to educate your children at home, then you need to make that a priority and you need to make it something that has an important place in the day. And I have found for me personally that finding the spot in which you are going to homeschool in your day is the best place to start. What time of day are you most fresh and cognitively able? What time of day are your children better prepared or better behaved? What time of day works best with your circumstances and your schedule? You need to think through all of those different aspects of your life and pick a time in which to homeschool. Most homeschool families choose the morning hours. I think some of that is because it's ingrained in us that that's when you do school. Public school starts, somewhere between 8 and 8:30. And so therefore, homeschool should start somewhere between 8 and 8:30. Well, that's not necessarily true, but it does seem to be something that a lot of homeschool families go ahead and do. We are not one of those homeschool families. In fact, we don't start until about 10 a.m. because by that point I've had some coffee, my house has had a chance to have a few little chores done, and I feel like everyone is ready at 10 a.m. And that's our personal family. That's how we operate. So we do a little bit of a half and half with a little bit of morning and a little bit of afternoon with a lunch break in between. A lot of families will find that they can get all of the schoolwork done in the morning. However, there are some families who are extending clear on into later in the afternoon hours, and I would encourage you to rethink that if you are finding yourself schooling from 8 a.m. until like 4 p.m., that might be a bit much for a homeschool. There are reasons that public schools go that long, and it's just not a good fit for a homeschool. So you might want to ratchet that back. In fact, I have a post on my blog about how many hours it takes to homeschool. I'd encourage you to look that up and just go through that and see my reasoning for why it only takes a certain amount of time per age group, and kind of use that as your guide to putting together a slot for your homeschooling to go in. Okay, so we talked about some people, school in the morning, some people school half and half, and then there's also people who have found that they have things that they need to be doing in the morning, and so it's better for them to homeschool in the afternoon. This is particularly true of people who have farm chores, or they have caregiving chores, or they have regular morning appointments for certain things. And so they have found that it's best to just hold off homeschooling until the afternoon hours. Likewise, there are also families who school in the evening. And I know that this is something that's really difficult to wrap your brain around, but if you are a homeschooling family who has a mom who works outside the home or inside the home, or dad is helping with some of the homeschooling, this may be a really great option for you. You may need to hold off on the homeschooling until you're home from work or you're available from your work at home job, and then do the homeschooling there. Or you may have your kids do some of their independent schoolwork while you're working, and then do some things together in the evenings that are part of the school day. None of these are all right or all wrong. They really need to be unique to your family and your circumstances, and you are allowed to think outside the box when it comes to putting together a homeschool schedule. If you find that you are needing more help putting together a homeschool schedule, I have a class for you. It is Creating a Homeschool Schedule You Love. It is a really fantastic class for figuring out all those moving parts and pieces and putting them together into a schedule that works really well for you. So I'd encourage you to check that out. You'll find it in the description, and you can go right there and start taking that class and start figuring out a homeschool schedule that you can stick with, and one that you will absolutely love because it will be tailored uniquely to your family. Okay, so now that you have fit homeschooling into a certain slot in your day, then you're going to fit the housework around it. This may be before you start homeschooling, in between some homeschooling subjects, or at the end of the homeschooling day. And you probably are going to need to have routines and systems that fit into all those places in order to get all the housework done that you need to have accomplished for the day. So for instance, like I said, we start homeschooling at 10 a.m. That allows for me to have table chores done from breakfast and a little bit of tidying up, and people have their morning chores, and we're all finished with those things so that then we can start with basically a clean slate for our 10 o'clock homeschooling time. Then after we've had lunch, we once again have table chores to do. We start back in on our afternoon schooling time. And then after school, they have a couple of hours to play, but right before they do their TV time, they do a quick tidy up. We get the house all reset. And basically it's pretty well set until the evening hours. We have our dinner, there's another set of table chores, and a lot of times before we watch anything or play games in the evening, we do another tidy up. The big deep cleaning that we currently do is on Fridays because we don't homeschool on Fridays. So that's our free day. We get up in the morning, we clean the house, and then our weekend begins. And we've been doing that for many, many years now. But prior to that, I had to do something different to get those deep cleaning chores done. And so we would do something every single day, or we would just do what I felt like was the most important each day. I had to do what worked for our family at the time. As my kids got older, I was able to start doing more of the one-day home blessing that I had done back when my son was little, and there was just basically him and his father and I, and we didn't have a lot of messes. But now that I have older kids who can help me, that's a really great thing to re-implement in our home, but it might not work for you at the stage that you're in right now. So you have to figure out how to fit that housework into the in-between places of your homeschooling day. And like us, we don't school on Friday, so that's the perfect time to do some sort of major housekeeping. For you, you might even choose to take off Mondays and allow yourself to reset the house at the beginning of the week. We like to do it at the end of the week because we like to have people over the weekend, and so we want to have the house as tidy and ready for company as possible. If you go to the post on my blog about cleaning the house in one day with children, you'll find there's a free printable there to help you kind of work through how to assign chores and get your kids on board with cleaning the house in one day. I also have a series of podcasts and posts on the blog that talk about different methods of cleaning with children. So you want to check that out as well. And for an even more in-depth discussion of these different cleaning methods, you can check out my book, Home Management for the Homeschool Mom. In that book, I talk extensively about how to manage your home while you homeschool, and a lot of those different methods, I tell you exactly how we did them and who they might be good for in a homeschooling environment. Okay, so the third thing you need to do is build some systems that work. You may have all this time to put these systems into place, but if you aren't doing systems that actually work for your family, you're not going to get anywhere with them. And this is where the danger of trying to fashion your life, your homeschool, your chores, your parenting after someone else tends to fall flat. Sure, we can learn from each other, but you do have to tailor those specific things to your specific family. You're not going to be able to just plug and play somebody else's schedule. I typically tell people to start with what bothers you the most and find a system for that. Or consider what's the most important thing in your house to have clean and start with that. So it's either something that bothers you or something that you really need to have cleaned regularly, and that's going to be your first system that you work on. So maybe it's the dishes. Maybe you feel like the dishes are always piling up, and you would be a much calmer mom if those dishes were not always piling up. Start a rotating dishwashing schedule. That's where you start with your system. Don't try to add a whole bunch of things. Just start there. This might be a system that rotates breakfast, lunch, dinner, and over again. It might be something that rotates on the day of the week, or it might be like what our family has done, and it's a monthly schedule. Somebody washes the dishes for a month, and then it switches to someone else. Or maybe if you're the only one capable of washing dishes, you actually set a scheduled time for washing those dishes. If you have a lot of littles, that may need to be just once or twice a day. If you have some older children who could maybe watch the younger kids while you wash the dishes, you could do that 3 times a day right after the meal. But start setting systems that work, or try things. If it doesn't work, that's fine. Give it a little time. But if it doesn't work, move on to a different system and see how that works. But by tackling the thing that is bothering you the most, you'll get the biggest bang for your buck out of trying out those systems. Another issue might be laundry. Laundry gets piled up, especially in a large family, and maybe that is something that you have really struggled with. Start working through laundry systems. I have a bunch of different laundry systems on my blog, all in a mega post that I will link here in the description so that you can kind of go through those and see maybe there's something that would work for you. You try the system on for a while, you adjust, you tweak it, and you try to make it work for your family, and then you get that going on autopilot, and then you add a new system on top of that one. Do not try to implement too many systems at once. Give yourself time, give yourself mercy, give your children time and mercy to also be able to figure these out. It will eventually become routine, and that's how schedules are built. One system at a time that becomes routine and autopilot, and then you build on top of that. So for instance, our family routine starts with waking up in the morning. We have morning chores that we do, and then we have breakfast and table chores that we do. School starts at 10 a.m., always with the same subject. We do our morning time, we have lunch and table chores again. We do our afternoon independent school. The kids get finished, they play, and then they have a 15-minute tidy right before TV time. Then there's dinner and dinner table chores. And then there's the evening hours that are mostly family time. Then we have our evening routine and we go to bed. Now that seems really simplistic, but as many of you know, if you've ever tried to implement somebody else's schedule and you look through that schedule and you click all the links that go to the different posts that these bloggers have written about, you will find yourself completely overwhelmed because it's too much information and you're trying to implement too many things at once. And that's why I say you have to start with one system, get it going to a routine, and build another system on top of it. And pretty soon, on down the road, you will have a really great schedule that works really well for you. Now, it's not going to work every single day, but for the majority of the time, it's a schedule that works with you, not against you. And finally, be ready to adjust as needed. Circumstances will change, family dynamics will change. You'll add another child, a child will move out. You may have all kinds of different things that happen to you over the years as you are homeschooling, and you need to be prepared to adjust. And it is okay that you have to adjust schedules and routines. It's just part of making a home. And so be prepared for that. Don't feel like you're a failure or feel guilty if you can't seem to stick to the same schedule year in and year out. It's actually a mark of a really great homemaker if you do adjust and change things as your children grow and change themselves, because you're not trying to fit all these children into the same schedule you've been doing since they were teeny tiny. You're acknowledging that people are growing up and that they need to do something different. They need to have chores added on. They need to have adjustments made. They need to have more leeway in this certain thing. As they get older, perhaps they get a job, and then you have to realize how much can they actually participate in the cleaning. How much do I put onto their schedule? How much do I need to take off? It's part of being a manager of your home, and it is a good part of it. It's a part that uses your brain and helps you to stretch and grow and challenge yourself as a homemaker. So encourage yourself with that fact that it really is a good thing to need to adjust and need to improve upon what you've been doing, especially if it starts to kind of stutter and stop and not seem to be moving as well as it once did. There's probably something wrong. There's probably an adjustment that needs to be made. Sometimes it's a real small one. Sometimes you need to throw the whole thing out and start over. But don't be discouraged by that. Be encouraged that you are actually doing your job as a homemaker, and this is going to be even better once you get through kind of the stutters and stops and starts of making a new routine. So friends, I hope that helps you understand a little bit better about how you can balance your homeschooling and homemaking at the same time. Again, you will need to lower your expectations in some areas because homeschooling takes a lot of energy and it tends to make a lot of messes, and that's okay. But if you have a little bit lower expectation of what you think everything needs to look like, you will start to be much more satisfied with the state of your home and the state of your homeschool and how you're doing as a homemaker if you realize that things just aren't going to be perfect all of the time. Now, if you ever have any questions for me that you'd like addressed here on the podcast, please send them to amy@raisingarrows.net. I answer all my own email. I would love to have a conversation with you and share the answers here on the podcast as best I can. As always, this is the Raising Arrows podcast. Here we discuss all things large family homeschooling and homemaking, and I am so glad that you stopped by. Can't wait to see you next time.